Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 53, Being Controlling Without Even Knowing It. So as you know, this month we're talking all about healthy versus unhealthy communication. And although we already talked about manipulation, today I want to explore some of the more nuanced ways that we can be controlling in our conversations with folks. And, on the face of it, some of these may look very normal or benign on paper, but there are reasons why eventually they tilt the conversation into a more disconnected and unsafe mode. And here's the kicker. No one's usually telling you. You just feel it. So, again, even though this stuff is very subtle and flies under the radar, it's just as important when we're looking at creating healthier, vulnerable connections. Okay, so before we dive in, I just want to stop and give another shout out to all of you on the front lines fighting for what is right, fighting against institutionalized racism, making it real. It feels different this time. I really hope it is. I hope we mean it. And so I just want to put that out there. I know you guys are putting yourself at risk for COVID by getting out there and protesting and making a statement. May we all continue to stand in our truth and make it real. Okay. I wanted to show a little bit of contrast this episode because I think, to me, contrast has always been an incredible teacher. When I could compare unhealthy versus healthy behaviors, why and why not, all that stuff, I think for me it cemented my motivation to become healthier and to help others be healthier. But it also helped me understand the why behind it. Because if you've been listening to me long enough, I got to figure out why. And I won't stop until I do. This doesn't mean I have all the answers by any means. I am always learning, always open. That's what's cool. I don't have to have all the answers. I'm just bringing up a really important conversation. All right, so what do I mean about being controlling without even knowing it? I think controlling can take many different forms and be very misunderstood. It often gets confused with someone setting boundaries. So I want to be very clear. What I mean about controlling is trying to control whatever outcome I have in mind at the moment. Maybe I want you to have a good impression of me. Maybe I want you to not be sad. A big one is I'm avoiding the hell out of conflict with you. My focus, therefore, is on nouns outside of myself. It's on others. It's on situations. It's not on myself. And so often I will have an agenda. And I know that sounds horrible. And yes, it is a type of manipulation. But remember, there are two types in my book. There's what I'm describing today as the dysfunctional, fear-based, stressed out, trying to control outcomes, and malice-based. And malice-based is where there's very little care for others. There's an actual lack of connection to your conscience, your inability to feel and show empathy for others. Okay, so today I'm talking about very caring people like you, okay, who still struggle to detach and let go of the outcome, who struggle to have better boundaries, and damn it, especially when it's people you really care about. That's when the stakes are high, and that's when it's the hardest, as you know, to let go of the outcome. Imagine you're in an ER waiting room and there's a loved one in there. We all know what kind of outcome you are like praying and meditating for, right? For them to be okay. So it's about caring, that turns into a little bit of caretaking and controlling, and it's not malicious. It's still agenda-based, so we still need to own it, as you'll see as we go through here today. All right, so like manipulation, it's just a struggle for me to let go and allow what it really is. It's about me getting needs met via unhealthy means. Healthier means would be asking directly for what I need, sharing with you vulnerably what's going on, setting a boundary with you, risking conflict. Getting needs met via trying to control the outcome. At the end of the day, it's all about not being able to handle reality. You hear me bring that up often in these episodes, and there's a reason why. If you can sit in reality, everything else falls into place. All right, so I want to go through some of the ways that we can subtly be controlling in a conversation and maybe not realizing it. This is not the entire list. I'm sure you will come up with more, you will notice more about yourself, but I'm hoping you do. I want you to discover, because when you discover on your own, boy, you're really going to be motivated. That's bought and paid for. All right. So the first one, and this is kind of obvious, asking a lot of questions. Now, this is not the every once in a while, asking for more information like, hey, how did that happen to you? Or, so what made you come to that conclusion? I'm kind of interested. I'm looking at buying that kind of car too. So I'd love to hear what you found out. We need to ask questions. I'm talking about the person who is always asking questions. Also, not sharing a whole lot about themselves. Here's the thing. If you are asking someone question after question after question, for example, your friend calls and you say, hey, how's it going? And she tells you that she has made a big decision about her job. And you say, so what made you come to that conclusion? No, that one's not so bad. That's helping her open up more. But then you can say, well, why would you pick right now to change jobs? I mean, we've got COVID going on, the economy's kind of shaky. So here's the question with implied judgment, remember? Okay, there's that vibe or innuendo. It says, what the hell is wrong with you? So questions can feel very intrusive. Even if we're not doing the judgy thing, even for asking just factual questions like, well, what happened? And then what did he do? And then what did she say? And then what did you say? And then what happened? Yeah. Now, if you are in an interrogation room and you are a detective or you're an investigator and you need to find out, absolutely. That is the place and time for interrogation. Okay. This is versus empathy. So let's roll that again. Your friend calls up and she's like, I got to make this real big career decision and I'm struggling. And you say, wow, that is a big decision. Empathy, affirmative, right? Tell me more about that. Like what's been going on? Well, how'd you get here? Well, that's okay. There's a little bit of a question there, but there's showing interest. I'm showing compassion and I'm showing interest without any judgment. And I say, wow, that's probably even more difficult for you. Yeah. With the economy the way it is, but it sounds like you feel like you really need to do this. Do you see how I held up the mirror with empathy and understanding? I put myself in her shoes. At this point, we've all probably had a time where we had to make a really big decision at a very bad time. You can't become an adult without having had to do that. And sometimes it went okay and sometimes it didn't. All right. So questioning really should be kept to a minimum. And remember how I've said it before, own it. Own it. The question is about you, not them. The question is about you, quote unquote, wanting to know, needing to know. That's yours and you own it. And a softer way to ask is to say, hey, for me, just so I can support you, I just want to understand a little better. Do you see how the focus has shifted where I'm letting her know the reasons why I'm asking? I'm not trying to put her on the spot. I'm just letting her know I'm actually seeking to understand. And hopefully if I do that with enough empathy intertwined with that, she won't feel put off or interrogated or judged. So when you want to ask a bunch of questions, I want you to think about your agenda, like what's really going on. Because here's the other underlying covert thing. A lot of times that's not what's going on. We're asking the question because we really need to be making a statement. Like A, I'm a little upset with you, but I haven't told you yet. B, I'm afraid you're going to make the wrong damn decision. So I ask you, so have you thought about this? And have you thought about that? And have you thought about this? And what about that? As opposed to just owning it and saying, I'm afraid for you. I'm struggling. This isn't even my choice. And I'm struggling because I don't know if I can handle if it goes south for you. Do you see the shift? All right. So if you tend to ask a lot of questions, also, I want you to focus on bringing it back to yourself and telling them about you instead. It's not that you're going to make it all about you. You're going to show them empathy, but you're going to own whether you let them in or not. You know, again, when we question people a lot, we keep them at arm's length and we keep ourselves safe. So as long as I keep the focus on you in the conversation, you won't have as much of an opportunity to challenge me, maybe question me, have me look at my own shit that I don't want to look at right now. Okay, so it's a really strong defense mechanism in some people. So kind of take a look at that where you are. You're probably somewhere on the continuum from maybe not asking enough questions, because that's a whole nother episode, to the other end, like that's all I kind of do. So, you know, healthy somewhere in the middle, right, where there's balance. The other way that we can be subtly controlling in our conversations is having that narrow perspective, that narrow view. You know, that's when you have a hard time seeing things any differently than you do. You know, you're not even willing to consider the possibility that thoughtful, other caring people could see things differently, and that's okay. I know that sounds crazy to say that out loud, but this is extremely common. And no one wants to admit to their rigidity, because who would want to? But it's real and it's there. And underneath of that rigidity is fear, right? It's fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of me standing out, fear of me owning my values, my thoughts, my opinions, because what if I'm wrong? And remember we talked way back about if I'm wrong, I'm not okay as a person? You know, you learned that in your family if you struggle with that. And that is something you can heal. That you don't have to have all the answers and you don't have to be perfect to be okay. That rigidity goes hand in hand with perfectionism, folks. Practicing being open. Feel yourself starting to freak out when your friend says, yeah, I don't know if I really agree with that. Or what if we try this instead? And I can struggle with this sometimes myself, so I get it. It's like, okay, I am overly invested in this outcome. And some of the things you can tell yourself in your head when they're talking is, it's okay. It's okay. I can hear them out. I can choose. I can be open. I don't have to have the only outcomes here. I don't have to have the only possibilities. But I don't have to be in fear. I can hear them out and then I can choose. Or maybe we can compromise. Or maybe we can come up with a third option that's even better than they or I even are thinking about right at this moment. So practicing being more open. If you're not, go back in the room later, maybe the next day, and say, hey, I thought more about what you said, and I think you bring up a really good point. You're probably going to do that more in the beginning. You're going to have to go back after the fact. And that's okay. Every time your subconscious witnesses you collaborating, it's going to empower you to do it more and more in the moment. All right, so look at your rigidity, perhaps. Now, before we move on to the next one, I want to say, there are absolutely times where we have to stand in our truth. You have to figure out, is this a boundary issue for me or is it a whatever, right? Hopefully you kind of already know you're defining boundaries and why, and it will help you figure out every situation. Like, does this matter to me and why? And could I bend a little bit and who cares? What really matters to me? Remember the as long as? All right. So another one is you find yourself often getting annoyed and resentful when other people don't follow your fabulous, wonderful advice. How codependent, right? So what this is about is our need to fix. And it sounds awful, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fix them, fix their problem via advice. Maybe if I tell them exactly what they should do, they'll follow my advice, have a great outcome. Here's that outcome again. Then everything will be fine. And I won't have to worry about them. The other thing is I can be needed. I, therefore, can feel very powerful because maybe I don't feel so empowered without being needed and fixing. I can have the answers. I can feel like I'm one up, which sounds terrible, but that's what's going on. I can focus on them so I don't have to feel feelings I don't want to feel. And damn it, I don't have to look in the mirror at my own stuff. These are some of the basic reasons why we tend to fix. And it's all about not wanting to accept that reality. Not wanting to detach and say that's about them, that's not my business. Just because I doesn't mean they. Just because I know the damn answer and they could fix this yesterday, I've been through it myself, I know all about it, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. That's about them. And unless and until they want advice that is solicited, right, that they come to me and ask, and even if they do that, they may or may not follow it. Haven't we all been on both sides of this equation, folks? You want to detach and let them choose and own your own stuff. And if you've done it, go back and apologize and say, I am so sorry I overstepped. I'm worried about you. I was hoping I could help you out there. But I want to honor that these are your choices. When the stakes are really high, this is when it gets tough. Those you parents out there, you know what I'm talking about. So, being controlling in conversations also means I'm more competitive than I am collaborative and connecting. More competitive. Sounds gross, but this is what's going on. So you often immediately bring it back to you or keep bringing the conversation back to you, instantaneously, rather compulsively. I don't think we even notice that we're doing this until we start taking notice that we're doing this, right? As soon as you really become aware and you're ready to work on this, you're going to see it, and you're going to see it all day long. So what that means is you bring it back to you without even asking them for more details or using empathy, right? This is about getting my needs met in unhealthy ways. It's about appearing to be in control. So, for example, Joe comes up to you and says, hey, I'm looking to get back in shape. You say, yeah, me too. I really need to lose some weight. I mean, this COVID has really got me hitting the carbs and I haven't been able to hit the gym and all that. Do you see? Immediately, you just made it all about you. Better would have been to keep it about Joe for a moment, okay? Focus on what's going on for Joe. So we could say, oh, wow, good for you. So what do you think of doing? And then he goes on to explain what he's thinking about doing, okay? And so when Joe is complete, you can kind of feel that, or you can ask, is there anything more that you wanted to share with you getting healthier? If they say, yeah, that's it, thanks for listening, you can say, well, actually, since you brought that up, I've been kind of thinking about that too. Then you can take a moment, if Joe's even interested, to talk about you, and you can connect on that. The error that most of us make, God, I've been so guilty of this, is the me too. It's like we're trying to fix their feelings and immediately let them know that they're not alone and they're not the only one and all that stuff. So, the intention is great. But what you end up doing when you immediately make it about you just told Joe that Joe's thoughts and feelings and needs are not important. We've just invalidated the hell out of him. And we don't mean to. That's not what's going on in our heart typically. It's our being uncomfortable with being vulnerable and using empathy. and it's making it about us. Well, let me make Joe feel better to let him know he's not the only one out of shape. We have to own that. That's about you. Another subtle way that we can be controlling in our conversations is using a lot of you messages. We've talked about this before. That's because I think we need a reminder often, sometimes all day long, to think about where our focus is right now. And if your focus is on them in terms of fixing them, changing them, wishing they were different, giving them lots of power over your well-being, that's not cool. So that is different from what I said a moment ago with Joe. We wanted Joe to have this moment to talk. But that doesn't mean I'm fixing Joe. I'm just letting him talk. And I'm showing interest, and I'm trying to seek to understand. When I mean focused on them in a bad way, I mean talking about what they did, what they didn't do, will they do, please don't. So, yes, we need to confront people, but we confront people with I statements. I need you to stop. I'm not cool with that anymore. I'm no longer going to tolerate that. I've decided I'm going to go to bed early and I just can't stay up late with you anymore. It's making it difficult for me to get up in the morning, and I want to take responsibility for that. We need to bring the focus back to us, not on them. We need to pay attention to what's going on for us. What do I need? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? And what am I afraid of? So if you find yourself focusing on others, there's lots of different reasons. One, you're trying to accept reality about the other. Do the grief work like we've talked about. Talk to a trusted friend about this. Get some support. Do some journaling. Bring it back to you. Okay, that's about them. What's underneath of that for me? What does that mean? Another way we can be controlling is we make assumptions and generalizations, right? I mean, our brains have to do that. I was talking to someone the other day, and they were talking about, noticing differences in race and culture and other people and gender. And our brain has to put things in categories so it can understand it. That's a chair. That's a boat. That's a child. That's a man. That's a woman. That's a teacher. And so what can happen is we can get lazy and make a lot of assumptions. We can put adjectives in that category around chair. And we can generalize from there. Okay. And so this can create a real reactionary stance. And that's why I put it in this conversation about being controlling. Because you can really quickly assume you knew exactly what they meant by what they said. They meant that as an insult. And you immediately give the other person a lot of power. You end up acting pretty immature and defensively, right? You can say things like, well, great, thanks for that, sarcasm. You can say, you just don't want me to go to the store with you. And again, that's manipulation. You're putting your fear that they don't want you to go on them. Now, what you can do in these moments, you can check it out. Say, hey, it kind of sounded like you were upset with me, but I just want to check that out. Is that true? Because sometimes maybe they're not being clear on their end, or they're giving some innuendo out there, or mixed messages. So sometimes we're having a very sensitive day, and sometimes that can be coupled with someone doing a little bit of acting out. So good for you, good for them. When you check it out with them, if they are acting out, it puts them on notice. Maybe they have to look at that, right? Maybe they have to say, yeah, you're kind of right. I'm a little frustrated with you, but I didn't know how to bring it up. So assume means I make an ass out of you and me. Try not to assume. If you do, go back, apologize, tell them what was going on for you, what you were afraid of, and see if you can heal it from there. And just become more aware of that, how reactionary you are. The other thing you can do is just practice not saying anything for a moment. Say, okay, what's going on? Do I need to react? I can come talk to them later if it's really important. And I might be wrong. Imagine that. Another way we can become controlling is ignoring the other person's feelings and only focusing on your own needs, okay? On your own needs. Maybe it's been a really tough day, and you are just consumed with being frustrated and uber focused on what someone did or something that happened, right? This is a form of control. So it really makes it hard to be emotionally present for folks. Try to be very, very aware of that, okay? Have your moment, but then doesn't need to be all day where you can't be there for your kids at dinner when they ask a question or for your partner. Now, I'm not talking about devastating losses. Then you just need to curl up and get fetal, and you're not going to be anything for anybody for a while. But I'm talking about regular daily stressors that we can have. So focusing on, okay, how present am I for other people? And it ain't all about me every day, all day. So another one that's very common and one that I struggle with at times too when I get really excited about a topic is interrupting. And when I work with couples, boy, this can be a big one. And it can create a lot of hurt and disconnect in a relationship. Interrupting is basically taking control back of the conversation. You're trying to stop their train of thought, right? Which in essence, it's trying to get them to see, understand, or change their view or agree with you. I know for me, it's been, I don't want them to think that. Here, let me give them the answer, right? And we can't do that. It's the fear. If I let them complete their theory, and the hardest time to not interrupt is when they are saying something that's not so pleasant about you or how they feel about you or what they think about you that you don't think is true. You don't want them to think that. You don't want them to feel that. You got to practice not doing it, not interrupting. And when you do, catch yourself, apologize, and shut up. All right? Sit on your hands. I don't think it's enough in and of itself. I think you also need to keep reminding yourself that it's going to be okay. It's fear-driven to interrupt. I'm afraid if I don't tell them right this nanosecond, right? And so it's an irrational fear. It really is. I mean, detachment is key, right? So you just tell yourself, it's okay. I can wait. I will speak my mind in a moment. If they even want to hear me, I can detach, let go. I can own what I'm really trying to control here. And I can stop trying to make it about me. Okay? I can be okay. You have to calm down that fight or flight response in your brain. So you can't just stop interrupting. You also got to tell yourself, it's okay. And it's better if I just kind of wait. I'm going to feel more empowered if I wait anyway. Because when we interrupt, we're in fear. That's not a grounded stance, and it usually never ends well. And I want you to think, too, about when you are interrupted, how does that feel? It feels crappy, right? It feels like you're being controlled. It feels like they don't care about what you're saying enough to let you finish. We all want to finish our thought. We want to feel complete. And we want to feel heard. So a big whopper of a controlling move in conversations is trying to fix their thoughts and feelings instead of just letting them have them. Now that we can do that via interrupting, we can do that in all sorts of ways. This can be overt, like, oh no, don't be mad, to subtly making it about you immediately. In other words, now you're upset because they're upset. Let me tell you, the lack of healthy separateness in a relationship will kill a relationship. I've sat with many a partner. This is huge. Because when you do that, you invalidate them, you invalidate how they're hurting, and now you've made their stuff about you, and that is so damn violating. That's disrespecting their boundaries. You can say things like, well, you're just too sensitive. Or it's not that big of a deal, or just get over it. I think these are horrible things to say to someone. It's code for, I can't handle you feeling that way because I have to look at me and change, or I can't change you. Remember to work on detachment. Those are their feelings. That's about them, and it's not your right. It's not your right. Pay attention, notice what feelings come up in you as they share theirs, and own them. Maybe wait till they're done and say, that was actually hard to hear. It hurts to know that I've hurt your feelings. Or maybe you are bringing up some stuff that I didn't want to look at within myself. All right, so the opposite of all of this, as you can see, the contrast is practicing compassion, detachment, and empathy. Compassion, detachment, and empathy. This is the only time it's okay to use the word you. I know I said earlier, don't use the word you. It's a judgment. But when we're practicing empathy, this is the one time where we want to keep the focus on them for a moment. You want to use an affirmative statement. You put yourself in their shoes for a moment. You imagine, how did that feel for me? What was difficult or what was wonderful about that or what was conflicting about that? Okay, what was the challenge? So that you can kind of have compassion, right? Because you've been there in some way, shape, or form. If you've gotten to adulthood, you've experienced frustration, anger, sadness, disappointment, fear, rejection. So you get it. You get it enough. Like, we don't go overboard and pretend to know what it's like to have lost a child if someone has. I mean, come on. But for the most part, for the run-of-the-mill frustrations, I think we can find a way to relate. So let's say Joe comes up to you and says, man, that sucked today. And you say, ugh, I can imagine. It's never fun to have to let an employee go. See, here you're empathizing with how difficult it feels to have to do this. And Joe says, yeah, God, I feel really awful about it, but you know what? It had to be done. Now, you don't want to jump in and fix Joe's feelings, right? Say, oh, but it's okay. No, don't invalidate him. We want to hear that at the end. It's going to be okay. We're not horrible people. But we don't want to hear it in the beginning. It just shuts us down, all right? So you would say, yeah, you had told me about that person's dishonesty and how others are really suffering. And here Joe goes deeper, that's what we want people to do. We want them to explore their heart, right? That's how they connect with us. And they got to get it out because they want to process it. And Joe says, yeah, man, I had to make that call. I mean, I couldn't let my other employees think that I had no backbone and didn't honor boundaries. I mean, I want us all to feel safe at the company and to have trust. And I knew they weren't going to have trust in me or trust in the organization if I let this person continue on. So Joe went deeper, and then Joe will figure it out that he's complete. Then, if you want to share, it's been hard to watch you walk through this, Joe. I wish you didn't have to, but I'm here if you want to talk about some more, and I think you did the right thing. And these are difficult decisions that leaders have to make. Again, we want to hear at the end that it's okay, just not in the beginning. So when we look at the cost of controlling in conversations, these are some things I want you to remember. First one is controlling won't let you feel closer to them. You may think it will by asking questions, by fixing their feelings, but it doesn't. Controlling is fear-based and it's arm's length. The only thing that brings us closer is vulnerability. More importantly, controlling will only push them away slowly, I promise you. Because here's the thing. They're going to have to stop bringing the important stuff to you. Let me repeat that. They're going to have to stop bringing the important stuff to you. The stuff in their heart, the stuff they're afraid of, the stuff they're worried about, the stuff they're excited about, the stuff they're proud of themselves for. These are all very vulnerable things. They're not going to bring them to you if you're going to judge them, fix their feelings, make their shit about you. They need to feel the psychological space to figure out their own stuff, to make their own decisions, and they just want your unconditional positive regard and support. Doesn't mean you don't have your own boundaries, but it means it feels emotionally safe to come to you. And if this is your child, oh boy, they are learning unhealthy defense mechanisms that, believe you me, are going to hurt them the rest of their life. And finally, controlling never allows you to be vulnerable or challenged either, so you are losing out 100%. When we're controlling in our conversations, God, the whole reason why we're doing it is to not be vulnerable and to not really connect. Conversely, connecting means learning more, taking time to show genuine interest. It means sharing deeper meaning with others. It means sharing great moments that we actually allow to happen. If we're so busy controlling a conversation, how are we allowing anything real to organically unfold? Connecting means more joy and serenity, I promise. And connecting means more awe and appreciation in the moment for who they are. And as a mom, believe you me, those moments with your kids will be gone soon enough. Okay, so today we talked about some of the subtle ways we can be controlling in our conversations without even realizing it, and ways to refocus on connecting instead. So this means taking stock of ways you might struggle. And I encourage you, if you noted a few of them, just take one at a time and practice it and learn as you go. Remember, no perfect, just practice. Just experiment. Just try it out. Try different things. See how it feels. Okay, so next week we're going to wrap up this month on healthy versus unhealthy communication. Looking forward to that. And thank you for joining me today. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're holding on to your sanity and your hope. Keep focusing on the good in you and in others. If you don't already get the Tribe newsletter, go to ownitpowercast.com and go to the show notes for today's episode and sign up. You will get the newsletter each Tuesday with any bonus downloads and lots of other good stuff. All right, so pay it forward. Keep focusing on compassion, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.